Good day, everyone. So, in here we are going to have some of the important terminologies in the study of fingerprint. So, let us try to familiarize it one by one before we move on formally with the study of fingerprint. So, to start with, we have here a question. So, let's try to answer it as we discuss those terminologies. So says here in our question, okay, it is the raised strips of the skin on the end joint, okay, end joint of our fingers and thumbs by which fingerprints are made, okay, and it is also called as papillary or epidermal ridges, okay. So looking at the question, we have here, or we can see some keywords in here, okay. So it says in here raised strips. So basically, if we are going to look on the choices, there are only two possible answers, okay. It could be letter A or letter B, because polydactylism and composite pattern, they are very much different, okay, or they are so far from the question, okay. And then we will know more about that as we move on the next slides. Well, anyway, the correct answer here is letter A, okay. If you are going to observe the ridges, okay, of your fingers or on the end, especially on the end joints, you can see that there are some parts wherein they are embossed, okay, or nakaangat, okay. And then meron din yung na parang nakababa siya. Okay? Na parang ihahalin tulad natin na parang kanal. Okay? So, the raised strips on the skin, we call it as friction ridges. Okay? And then later on, we are going to have also the furrows or yung mga nakababa na parte ng ridges natin. That is what we so called as furrows. And we are going to look more deeper on that. So as you can see here also in the picture, okay, if you can see it here on our camera, we have here on our PowerPoint presentation, you can see those embossed or raised strips or yung nakaangat. We call those as friction ridges. Okay? And then yung mga nakababa naman, okay, yung parang canal look like a canal, okay? Yun yung tinatawag natin na furrows. So eto siya. Okay? So yung nakababa or deepened, okay, part, that is what we so called as furrows. So yun yung pagkakaiba ng dalawa. And moving on, we have here the term polydactylism. So bakit hindi nasama or nasabi ko kanina na yan ay masyadong malayo sa question? Because when we say polydactylism, we are just referring to this, okay, the appearance of extra fingers as anatomically known. Okay, so basically, we have 10 fingers normally. Okay, we have 10 fingers. And there are some individuals who possess or who are having, okay, abnormal abnormality wherein they are having excess fingers, and a that is condition of polydactylism. Okay, so as you can see here in our picture, some or common, okay, common extra fingers are located on the thumb part, okay, and then that is a condition of polydactylism. And next in here is the so-called furrows. Okay, so ito yung sinasabi ko po kanina na pag furrows, okay, this is the one that are deepened or depressed like, okay, or canals like between the ridges. Okay, so kanina, napag-usapan natin, we call this as friction ridges, or in some, they just call it as ridges. So yun, ito yung nakaangat. Okay, and then, etong canal-like, okay, that is what we so-called as furrow. So same as to here. So yung nabuo, okay, yung nakakabuo ng fingerprint natin, okay, ng pattern, okay, or yung nakaka-impress ng fingerprint natin sa surface, okay, sa smooth surface, whether that is a glass, okay, or that is a solid surface, ang nakakabuo ng pattern dyan is yung ridges. Okay, and then yung mapapansin ninyo na may kulay puti, okay, those are the furrows, okay, or that is formed by the furrows, okay, of our skin. So that is, again, the difference between those two. Another one, we have here the so-called composite pattern naman. So ang composite pattern, nasabing composite pattern yan because it is a combination of two patterns in one. Okay, take note. Combination of two patterns in one. So it could be, okay, two loops, okay, or it could be a loop with whirl, okay, combined with whirl. And as a rule, it composed, okay, with two deltas and two cores. So as you can see, we have here in the picture, you can see that this is an example of composite pattern, and as we call it, or we can call it as double loop whirl. Okay, so later on, we are going to discuss further on how we are one by one on the formal lecture. But as to just an introduction, we have here, okay, bakit natin nasabi na double loop whirl? Kasi it is composed of two loops that are uh, ano to? It is composed of two loops connected, okay, combined, and then they are forming whirls. So requisite kasi kapag tayo ay magsasabi, para masabi natin na double loop whirl yan, okay, it usually have two deltas and two cores. So nasan yung delta? Okay, ito yung delta niya. We can locate the delta in this part, and yung sa kabila naman is dito, and yung core is on this part. So that is why it falls as an example of composite pattern. Okay, central packet loop whirl, it could be said also as composite pattern because it combines two patterns in one. So ano naman kapag central packet loop whirl? Okay, combination of loop and ano yan, and plain whirl. Okay, plain loop and then plain whirl. So parang ang itsura, okay, loop, pag sinabi nating loop, ganto ang itsura niya usually, and then yung whirl is it's inside. Kaya nasabi na central packet loop whirl. Okay? And dito sa second, okay, definition that was mentioned here is the pattern is also called as twin loop, okay, or double loop pag sinabing composite in some sources, okay, or sometimes called as double whirl. So take note of the term composite pattern, okay. And we have here the next one, the transitional pattern. So pag sinabi namang transitional pattern, it is almost like the same with the composite pattern, but it doesn't necessarily say that it has two core or two deltas. Okay, so again, when we say transitional pattern, it combines the characteristics of two pattern into one. Okay, katulad na lang din ng composite pattern. So an example of that is plain loop. Okay, plain loop. Okay, plain loop with, okay, and plain whirl. Okay, so ano yung nabuo nila? So usually ang mabubuo dyan is again central packet loop whirl. Okay, so that is classified, or that is also termed as transitional pattern. Okay, so the only difference with composite pattern is it doesn't necessarily require that it has two deltas and two whirls. Two cores. Okay, so that is transitional pattern and composite pattern. Well, we are going to have more that on the classification, or when we are already in the fingerprint patterns. So that's for now. Okay, central packet loop whirl. This is okay. So if you are not, if it is not that as clear on my drawing, okay, this is an example of central packet loop whirl. Okay, this image. So as you can see, this is the whirl, and surrounding it is the loop. Okay, so that is for that part. And then we have here also approximating patterns. So bakit kaya nasabing approximating patterns? Nasabi pong approximating patterns yan, it's because it has extreme complexities, okay, in their formations, or we cannot assign definite specific interpretation, or meron kasi yung mga fingerprint impressions na hindi natin masabi na yan ay dented arch, hindi natin na masabi na yan ay loop, or hindi natin na masabi yan na ay whirl. Okay, kaya yung mga ganong fingerprint impressions, we term them as approximating patterns. Okay? So if we can't identify the definite patterns, then we can term it as approximating patterns. Next in here is single fingerprint method. So this was the method of Harry Batley. Okay, so Harry Batley, and it is very much different with the fingerprint classification of Henry also. Henry. Okay, because in single fingerprint method, ang sabi dyan, okay, it's a system of classifying and filing single fingerprint device only. I mean a single fingerprint. Okay, so it was designed by Harry Batley. Kindly take note of his name. Okay, and he was the former chief of New Scotland Yard Fingerprint Bureau. So as for single fingerprint method, it only records only one fingerprint in one card. Okay, in one card, only one fingerprint. Okay, so this is common for latent prints, those fingerprints that are recovered from the crime scene. Okay, so unlike dun sa Henry classification method, that all the fingerprints are being recorded. Okay, or the 10 fingerprints of the 10 fingers are being recorded in one index card. Okay, or in one card. So this is for single fingerprint method. Okay, only one card per one finger, or per finger I should say. Okay, and then we have here blocking out. Ito yung gagawin natin na medyo nakakalito later on. Okay, kasi kailangan yung i-memorize yung mga symbols ng bawat patterns, yung letters na nagre-represent sa bawat patterns. Okay, and then meron ding numbers. Okay, so yun yung kailangan nating kapisaduhin in order for us to block, or in order for us to place, okay, or in order for us to place the proper symbols or letters or numbers that represents the fingerprint patterns in the card, okay, or in the fingerprint card. So yung paglalagay ng symbols sa fingerprint card, okay, that is called as blocking out. Okay, later on we are going to do that. We have here an example. So kung mapapansin niyo, that is, or these are fingerprints taken. Okay, fingerprints taken. So as you can see, all of their fingerprints, or the fingerprints of the individual are taken. 10 fingerprints. So as you can see in the card, makikita nyo merong mga letters na W. Okay, meron din symbol na slash. Okay, na naka-slant ng pakaliwa. Okay, or pakanan I should say. Okay, and then meron din yung numbers. So yun, that symbolizes something. Okay, so kapag W yan, okay, it symbolizes, or it says plain word. Kapag yan naman, it says it is a loop. Okay, and then merong specific pa yan na kung anong klaseng loop yan. Depends on the symbol also. Okay, so that is what we so-called as blocking out. Okay, and then catch or indent naman, ito yung, okay, the location or finding of previously filed records card on the of the subject. Okay, so meron kayong meron kayong subject ulit. Okay, and then tingin niyo meron naman kayong nakuhang records niya previously, and then the act or the performance, okay, in finding the location or in locating his previous records, that is an act of catch or indent. Okay, or especially sa mga habitual delinquents, okay, na paulit-ulit na pupunta sa station, or paulit-ulit na involve sa crime. Okay, so you can you can find their previous records, and that is an act, or that is the term as catch or indent. And we have here edgeoscopy naman. Edgeoscopy, by the word edge, that is the study of the characteristics formed by the sides or edges of the papillary ridges. So we have here an example image. So as you can see in here, this is a fingerprint impression. Okay, and then ano yung pinagfufukusan ng edgeoscopy? Ano yung pinagtutuunan niya ng pansin? The study of edgeoscopy, ang inaaral dyan is yung sides ng ridges. Diba? Ito, sabi natin, ang ridges ay ito. Okay? And then furrows yung puti. Furrows yung bumubuo ng white formations na yan. So, ang idioscopy, ang inaaral nila is yung edges ng ridges. So, bawat, ano yan, bawat formation. So, as you can see here, yung parang ginuguhit ko na to, that is the edge, or yung sinusundan ko na ito, na side is, yan yung focus ng idioscopy. So, that is being analyzed in the study of idioscopy, yung edges. So, or the sides of the ridges. So, that is for idioscopy lang naman. And next here, pag sinabing envelope naman, when we say envelope, it is a single recurving ridge enclosing one or more rods or bars or short ridges. So, as you can see, asan yung envelope dyan? Okay, ito yung envelope. Okay, envelope ay ito. Bakit? Sabi dyan, it is a single recurving ridge, or single recurving ridge, ibig sabihin yan, fully or parang almost complete circuit siya. Okay? Single recurving ridge, almost nakabuo siya ng loop pattern. Okay? So, yan, it encloses bars or rods. Yung rods or bars na tinatawag natin, it's the straight lines here. Katulad ng mga straight lines na to, that is called as bars or rods. And yung nakapalibot dyan, we call it as envelope. Okay, take note of that. A single recurving ridge enclosing, it's either 1, 2, or more than 2 rods or bars. Okay, so asan naman dito? Let's try to have here. In this pattern, asan dito yung envelope? So, makikita nyo, ito yung bars. Okay, yung rods. Diba? And then, nasan yung single recurving ridge? So, ito. So, yung single recurving ridge na yan, we call it as envelope. Okay? And then, next, in our definition of terms here is the FBI fingerprint classification system. So, FBI fingerprint classification system, by the word itself, it is the device, or it is a system devised and perfected by the FBI investigation, and this is the one that they are using in their organization. Okay, and next, fingerprint classification index naman is, this is a series of guide cards having tabs on which are the various classifications combinations, or yung ginagamit nila na card. Okay, we are just referring to the cards that they are using. So, katulad nung napakita ko kanina, okay, meron tayo yung card na ito. This is the Henry classification card. Okay, na ginagamit. Ito yung index card na ginagamit. While on the FBI, meron din naman silang sarili. Okay, na index or card, guide cards na ginagamit in recording fingerprints. Okay, and then next here, okay, so anyway, this is for Henry classification cards. So as to the FBI, we're not able to found one. Okay, and then we have here the latent prints. So what is the term latent prints? Okay, simply pag sinabi nating latent prints, these are the prints that we can find in the crime scene, or common in the crime scene. So ano ba yan? It could be hidden or concealed fingerprints found at the scene of the crimes. Okay, that's why this time we are needing some different kinds of powders, okay, that we can use to develop fingerprint impressions sa crime scene. Or we need an advanced technology of photography in order for us to digitalize or improve the ano to, yung visual, okay, in order for us to visualize the fingerprint impression. So we can see it through our naked eye, okay, but by the use of the advanced technology, then maybe we could zoom it, okay, and we could further analyze the pattern. Okay, and then what we saw, that is termed as latent prints. These are the fingerprints that we locate or we can find in the crime scenes. Okay, and then we have here the post-mortem fingerprinting. So by the word post-mortem, ibig sabihin dead person. Okay, so it's just the process of taking fingerprints of a dead person or a deceased person for identification purposes. And we have a specific, in our crime laboratory, as of now, we have here a post-mortem fingerprinting kit also. So we are going to show that on our the following discussion, okay, that we'll be having. And next is recording. So it's simply the placing of the fingerprints in their proper space on the card. So this is an example of, again, Henry classification system card. So as you can see, this is for the right hand, okay, and then the second column is for the left hand, and then merong proper order yan, okay, na kailangan yung sundin, okay, in taking the fingerprints. And below is the fingerprints of, the fingerprint of all the 5 fingers, okay, and then that is just simply the term recording, okay, in the study of fingerprint, because in other field it is different also. Okay, next is read. Let's try to have here the different ridge characteristics, or in the term used by Francis Galton, if you still remember, tinawag niya as minutiae. And excuse me, these ridge characteristics are the ones that we are going to look more in order for us to find, in order for us to have a conclusion if that fingerprint is match, or that if fingerprint is really, okay, the same with the fingerprint that we are, that fingerprint is only possessed by a single individual, okay, or if that fingerprint is the same with the fingerprint that we find from the crime scene, and the same with the fingerprint of the individual. Okay, so this is the little details, as said here, little details in the ridges of fingerprints. So these are the ones that we can use to identify fingerprints or identify individual. Okay, so that is for ridge characteristics, okay, or the term ridge characteristics. And later on we have here, or we have the different example of it, okay. And then we have here ridgeology. Okay, pag sinabing ridgeology naman, the study of poroscopy, idioscopy, and ridge characteristics for the purpose of positive identification of fingerprints. So it's the combination of the three, okay, the three fields in here. So we have poroscopy, or the study of pores, okay, and then we have here idioscopy, or as I mentioned a while ago, the edges of the ridges, okay, and then combined with the study of ridge characteristics for the purpose of positive identification of fingerprints, then that is the study of radiology. Radiology, okay, radiology. And next in here is ridge counter. Okay, we have here an instrument. Okay, so this is called as ridge counter. It's a small pointed instrument used for counting ridges, and we call it as ridge counter. Okay, and filing naman. Pag sinabing filing, it's just simply refers to the operation of locating the proper place in a fingerprint file. Okay, we are going to place the taken, okay, or the recorded fingerprints in the index card. Okay, we are going to place them, or that index card, or that card is being placed, or we are going to find a place in order to put them, okay, or store them. So, or in the proper file, okay, wherein we are going to store them. And uh we have here the term dactylography naman. So dactylography, okay, so medyo may nakakalito dito sa dalawa, kasi meron tayong dactylography and then meron tayong dactyloscopy. But what study is more on or what study is being used more on criminal investigation. Okay? So tignan natin yung definition. So sa dactylography, it is the scientific study of fingerprints as a means of identification. Okay? So take note, it is for identification. Okay? Scientific study of fingerprints as a means of identification only. Okay? So we are studying the fingerprint of that individual. Okay? In order for us to identify that that is his fingerprint. Okay? Or just studying his fingerprint. But when we say dactyloscopy already, okay, it is already the examination. Okay, examination and comparison of fingerprint. Okay, the science of identification of a person by how examination and comparison of fingerprint. That's why in our subject, or in the previous curriculum, they are saying dactyloscopy, not dactylography, because this is the term that we are using, okay, when we say examination and comparison of fingerprint, especially finger latent prints, okay, with the taken fingerprint from the suspect. Okay, so we are going to compare the latent print we found from the crime scene, and then we are going to compare the taken fingerprint from the suspect, and then let's try to find out if that match or if not. Okay, or if that is really, okay, his fingerprint, that or the fingerprint found in the crime scene is his fingerprint also. Okay, and that is dactyloscopy. So just take note, when we say or when we include already examination and comparison of fingerprint, then that is dactyloscopy. But for dactylography, that is only just a scientific study for identification. Okay, not an act of examination in comparison of fingerprint. So this term is derives from the Greek word dactylus. Kindly take note also this one, dactylus, and we have here, okay, it means a finger. Okay, dactylus, it means a finger, and we have here scupian. Okay, it means to examine. Okay, so that is for dactyloscopy. And yes, dactyloscopy is also, yes, a practical application of fingerprints and the making of identification by fingerprint comparison and classification of fingerprints. It's just the same on what we have said a while ago. Okay, so we have here the allied science of dactyloscopy. So what are the allied science of dactyloscopy? So we have here the first one, the term poroscopy, or the study of pores. So anong ibig sabihin yan? Okay, the study of sweat pores, okay, found in the friction ridges. So if you are going to look closer sa ating fingerprint, okay, makikita nyo yung ridges, okay, merong mga butas-butas yan. Okay? Yung ridges natin, may mga butas-butas na nabubuo dyan. Okay, and then it's because of the sweat pores na meron po ang ating ridges. Okay, and then dyan lumalabas yung sweats or yung pawis natin. Okay, yung waste natin sa katawan. Okay, and then yan din yung nakakatulong, okay, para mabuo yung fingerprint impression. Yung sweat pores, yung sweat na yun yung nakakatulong para mabuo yung fingerprint impressions natin. Okay, and then the study of that, or the study of these pores being found on the ridges, and that is called as poroscopy. Okay, so by the word poros, okay, it came from the word poros, it means pores, and then we have here the scupian, it means to examine also. Okay, so that is for poroscopy. For chiroscopy naman, by the word chiro, okay, so it came from the word term cheer, okay, char, okay, char means a hand, okay, and then scupian means to examine, okay, or in other words, when we say chiroscopy, it's the study of palms of the hand. Okay, and then if you remember, we have an individual, okay, or on the first cases, okay, there is an individual that was convicted just because of his palm. Okay, there is a palm impression that was found on the window glass. Okay, they studied it, and it was, okay, it leads to the identification of that individual. Okay, and then that's, or studying the palms of the hand, that is chiroscopy. Okay, and yes, we have here the last one, podoscopy naman. So by the word podo, okay, pag sinabing podo, it means foot, and then scupian means to examine. So this science deals with the study of the sole of the foot. Okay, it's so you can see in here, they are using it also as for identification, or it could be used for uh, as an evidence, or it could be used in investigation to find out, okay, the identity of the individual, or that can help, okay, in finding out the identity of the individual. Especially kapag yung crime scene, or in the crime scene, they were able to find a foot impression. Okay, lalo na kapag yung crime scene is medyo maputik. Okay, so that is podoscopy. And we have here the nature of fingerprint. Okay, so fingerprint, we say fingerprint, it is a composition. Okay, take note, fingerprint is a composition which appears on the surface, okay, surface of the bulbs on the inside of the end joints of the finger and thumbs. Okay, so fin so basically fingerprint, it is composed of the ridges and furrows. Okay, and then with that ridges and furrows, okay, and with that pattern, we have those ridge characteristics, or those small details that we are going to observe, or we are going to focus on, and that could lead for identification. Okay, so uh, that is for this part. Okay, and again, fingerprint can also be referred to as the impression. So it's not just the pattern that is being formed in our hand, I mean in our finger, but we can say also as fingerprint, it is the impression made by the end joints of our fingers. So if we are going to touch a smooth surface, there is an impression that is being left, and that is termed as fingerprint. Okay, and take note, it is also called as reversed reproduction. Fingerprint is also called as reversed reproduction, but that is, not the common term that they are using. Okay, so this is the reverse reproduction of skin surface detail. Okay, and then these ridges are called papillary or friction ridges. Again, those uh, ano to, those uh, part of the skin, okay, the part of the skin that is, or that forms our fingerprint pattern. Okay, and then again, fingerprint as an impression, we say that it is the reproduction on some smooth surface of the pattern or design. So by the ridge of the side of the end joint of the fingers and the thumb, okay, through the medium of ink, okay, or any coloring substance capable of producing visibility. So, common, okay, kapag sa white surface, ang nakikita natin dyan, or common na makikita natin, is darker na fingerprint. Okay, kapag light na nga yung surface, and then light pa yung ink, or light pa yung substance na meron sa kamay natin, then possible hindi makikita through naked eye yung fingerprint. Okay, but sometimes we can easily observe fingerprints depending on the surface, or the color of the surface wherein the fingerprint was impressed. Okay, so that could be one factor in order for us to easily locate fingerprints. And fingerprint as a science, okay, it is the identification of a person by means of the ridges appearing on the fingers. Okay, not only in the fingers, but on the palms, and of course on the soles of the feet. Okay, so kaya nga nabanggit natin kanina yung tatlong allied science ng fingerprint. Okay, so next in here is the three dogmatic principle of fingerprint. So na-mention na natin to ng mga nakaraan. So what are these? So first one is principle of individuality, or principle of variation. Okay, so it says in here, there are no two fingers that are exactly alike. Okay, remember that. That's why fingerprint is really very much reliable method of identification. Okay, so under the principle of individuality, no two fingers that are exactly alike, or two fingerprint are exactly alike. Okay, and then the individuality of fingerprint is not determined by its general shape. So it's not on the general pattern. Okay, kapag yan ay plain loop, I mean plain whirl, okay, loop, ulnar loop, okay, or radial loop, okay, that is not the way on how we are going to identify. Hindi ibig sabihin na yung nakita nyo sa crime scene is ulnar loop siya, and then yan ay nakuha sa index finger, and then nakita nyo sa suspect yung index finger niya, ulnar loop din yung nabubuo na fingerprint niya. Hindi ibig sabihin na automatic na siya na yung individual na yun. Okay, so we can determine its identification by careful study of the ridge characteristics or yung minutiae or yung small details na makikita sa fingerprint. Okay, yun yung pagtutuunan ng pansin in order for us to accurately identify or conclude that that person is really the owner of that fingerprint. Okay, and it is relative identity, number, and location of characteristics. So another one in here, in checking for similarity, okay, most experts, nabanggit natin to on the part of low card. Okay, most expert, okay, they agreed with the idea of Edmond Locard. So it requires 10 to 12 matching points. Okay, matching points, then that could be or that could conclude positive identification. So we have here some places or in some countries they are using different matching points. For Spain, they are using 10 to 12 points. But for England, they are using it's higher. Okay, 16. They need higher matching points. So 16 in order for them to say that is a positive identification. In France, 17 matching points. For Germany, 8 to 12 matching points. And especially most Asian countries requires 12 kasama na rin ang Pilipinas dyan. Okay? So, most of us, we are requiring 12 matching points. And, yes, that is for principle of individuality. Next in here is the principle of permanency naman. Okay? Or in other words, they call it as principle of constancy, perennial, and immutable. Okay? So, what is being said in here? So, it says that the configuration and details of individual ridge characteristics of fingerprint patterns do not change. Okay, it remain constant and unchanging, and they persist after death or until hanggat hindi pa nadi-decompose, okay, yung katawan, still there's still the formation. Kaya meron yung post-mortem examination natin or post-mortem fingerprinting natin kasi pwede pa rin nating ma-identify yan through the fingerprint kahit pa namatay na siya. Okay? So we can still take his fingerprint and then we can use that or we can study that to identify his or that individual. Okay? So that is why we say that fingerprint is permanent also. Aside from that, okay, it remains unchanged during individual's lifetime. Okay, and then it also, okay, aside from that is these ridges is not only for that purpose. Okay, bakit meron tayong fingerprint ridges or meron tayong ridges, okay, in our palms? It's because of this helps us in our grasping ability. Okay, so that is not purposely for identification, but it's only so for grasping ability. Okay, so it's unchanging. Okay, and we have here some studies or some ano to, situations or studies that says or that proves the constancy of ridges and their configuration. Okay, so we have here Wentworth and the real Wilder. Okay, so anong meron dito? They illustrated a series of 6 prints of the right thumb of a child. Okay, so they try to study a thumb or the fingerprint found on the right thumb of a child. So, anong ginawa nila? They take the fingerprint of the child, okay, and then they have it, or they take intervals. Okay, so they started taking the fingerprint of the child 5 years old pa lang siya, okay, and then after every year, okay, or after every month, they are taking his thumbprint until he was 14 and a half years old. Okay, and then they were able to find out, okay, during that period, okay, during na lumalaki siya, walang nagbago sa pattern ng kanyang uh, fingerprint. Well, hindi nga siya nagbago pero syempre lumalaki siya. Okay, but it does not change. Kaya sinabi nila, it doesn't change morphologically or hindi na bago yung pattern niya. It's just only the size, okay, but the pattern, it doesn't change. Okay, and then we have here Herschel. study of Herschel. Okay, so first made his own fingerprints at the age 26. Okay, and then after years, okay, he made them again at the age of 44 naman. Okay? And then at the last time na kinuha niya yung fingerprint niya, okay, at 83, and then he found out that his fingerprint doesn't change. It remains constant. So that was the experiment of Herschel naman. Okay? And then we have here on Welker. Okay? So as we have the last time, okay, he prints, okay, si Welker, anong ginawa niya? He prints also his own fingerprint and palms, and first made in 1856 at the age of 34, and after almost 40 years, okay, after almost 41 years, he tried also to print it again, and then he found out that there's no change. It doesn't change. So that is for Welker. Okay, and then another one is so those are the famous individuals that prove the principle of, okay, permanency of fingerprint. And then we have here the constant, still on the constancy of ridge and their configuration. Okay, meron din yung mga nagsasabi na fingerprint could be deformed. Ano yung mga dahilan or ano yung mga factors? Okay, so we have here the example, okay, yung mga nagtatrabaho as dishwashers. Okay, scrub woman and worker in time, plasters, similar substances, usually effect of prolonged exposure of the hand to alkali and water. So kung mapapansin ninyo, kapag laging hawak-hawak mo, 'di ba, is tubig, magiging ganito yung itsura ng kamay mo or yung finger mo. Okay, so they say that this could be a factor that could deform the fingerprint. Okay, it's because of the nature of the work. So katulad ng mga dishwasher, katulad din ng mga carpenter, okay, laging lalong-lalo na kung hindi sila naka-gloves. Okay, aside from carpenters, meron din yung exposed sa radiation. Okay, nagtatrabaho sa mga laboratories or sa mga hospitals, okay, that are exposed with radiation or X-rays. Okay, and then we have here the ones that are having the sickness, leprosy. Okay, may produce cutaneous or cutaneous. So this could be cutaneous disintegration of greater or lesser degree, but uh, it depends on the ano to yung kung gaano kagrabe yung effect niya. Okay, or uh, yung situation, okay, nung leprosy. Okay, and then when the damage is slight and superficial, the original characteristics of the skin may be restored. Yes, pwedeng ma-restore yan, but there are sometimes na hindi siya hindi since masyadong malalim yung sugat, meron yung iba medyo hindi na nababalik sa dati. Okay? Pero yun nga lang, mahahalata na yan ay wound. Okay? Or yan ay nasugatan kasi mahahalata mo sa fingerprint. Okay? Fingerprint impression na merong scar na puti. Okay? And then yung white line na nabuo na yun, okay? Na impression na yun, that is a sign that that is a wounded finger. Okay? And as you can see here, as in the picture, it is an example of a hand of an individual who was exposed and X-rays. So, halos masira na yung skin niya. Okay, and then those individuals suffering from a disease. Also, they could be permanently effaced. Okay, especially kapag ang affected ay yung skin. And then, also, again, kapag hindi deep enough yung penetration, okay, so pwedeng ma-restore or pwedeng mag-cause ng gantong itsura. So makikita nyo, yung sa fingerprint, yung sinasabi ko kanina, mapapansin nyo sa mga fingerprint impression, merong mga nakaslant na puti. Okay? So yun, sign yun ng or yan yung impression na mabubuo kapag meron kang sugat sa iyong kamay. Okay? So as you can see in here, ganito po yung itsura ng sugat niya. And then nung kinuha nila yung fingerprint niya, naging ganito yung guhit. Okay? Doon sa fingerprint niya. Okay? Papansin niyo yan. Sugat na yan. Okay? And then, kapag pag yung wound is, is too deep, okay, halos sagad na sa buto, then that could deform, okay? Hindi na ibalik sa dati yung formation. Okay, and then that's it for the constancy or permanency of fingerprint. And again, on the dogmatic principle still of fingerprint, we have here principle of infallibility. Infallibility. So it says in here that it will not fail or it will not be forged or hindi yan mapipeke. Okay, so evidence is so reliable reasons why fingerprint one of the infallible means of personal identification. So hindi ito basta-bastang ma-forge. Kasi sabi din nila, yung fingerprint natin ay, okay, nabubuo na yan. 3 to 4 months old pa lang tayo sa intrauterine or embryology stage. Nagsisimula ng mabuo yan. Okay? So, yan. Nabuo nung embryo stage pa lang natin. Pero yan, hindi nagbabago. It remains unchanged throughout the life until final decomposition. Aside from that, okay, the pattern formation formed by the papillary ridges contains peculiar characteristics upon which a person can be identified by the fingerprint examination, or these fingerprint impressions that we are having, okay, or that is being formed by our fingers, okay, by analyzing the peculiar characteristics or those ridge characteristics or minutiae, we can, or that is a reliable way in identifying, okay, the individual. Okay, so it is also acceptable, or almost every police and law enforcement agencies throughout the world accept, okay, or adapt and utilize fingerprint system. So this is reliable kasi halos lahat ng bansa, okay, they believe, or halos lahat ng tao, they believe that this is an accurate identification method. Okay, and then we have here the courts and other authorized had since time immemorial taken its importance as a means of identification. So matagal nang ginagamit yan or tinatanggap sa korte din as a method of identification. Okay, and aside from that, fingerprint will speak for itself. Or in other words, they have this term, okay, legal term, or ano to, the term, if I'm not mistaken, it's a Spanish, okay, term. So res ipsa loquitur, okay, or a thing will speak for itself. Okay, so yes nga naman, kasi kapag nakita yung fingerprint, okay, mo sa crime scene, it is not questionable already. Okay, na hindi mo na ma-deny or hindi mo na masasabi natin na paano ka nagkaroon ng fingerprint mo doon kung wala ka naman doon sa area. Okay, unless talagang sinadya, na pinatay ka and then kinuha yung kamay mo and then pinunta sa crime scene and then gumawa ng finger impression doon. Okay, but yes, by having this or by considering this principle or by considering this, okay, fingerprint will speak for itself. Yes, it says that, or you can't deny, okay, or it's really, okay, na yung individual ay nandun sa lugar. It will say that the individual is in that place, during that time or in a certain time, because we can't form a fingerprint kapag wala siya dun sa area. Okay? How can he create or how can a fingerprint be formed in that area kapag wala ka or wala yung presence mo dun? Okay, so it cannot lie. The fingerprint will speak for itself. Okay, and then that is for the dogmatic principles of fingerprint. Okay, so that ends for now. Okay, for this video presentation, that ends on the dogmatic principles. So if you have a question, you can save it or you can comment down on our comment section. Okay, or you can just save it and that will be answered in our synchronous session also. So we'll be having as class discussion on our synchronous session. So thank you very much for listening and see you on our synchronous session.